Okay, so I decided because we had some discrepancies between the syllabus schedule, which is one of the reasons I put on the syllabus schedule, this is subject to modification, because sometimes things like life events happen, and because I ended up having to go to 2 competitions this year instead of just one, I had to have Dr. Morelli substitute, as you all will recall, and he didn't get through quite as much of the content as he was supposed to get through during the 2 days that he substituted for me while I was in beautiful Orlando taking our sales team to competition. And so I had to kind of figure out, at the end of the semester, if we have something like that happen, what I'm going to cut. And because it's my class and I get to decide what I want to talk about, I of course decided I would cut channels, because that's Dr. Ginchev next door. He's the logistics person, and it's the part that I really don't like because it's just boring. When I wanted to get my PhD, I got the JD first, and I was here at UCO as the Associate General Counsel and a professor of legal studies, and I decided that marketers made more money, and so I wanted to get the PhD in marketing, and so I toddled off to get a PhD. But I looked at a number of schools, and one of the things I wanted to do is I really wanted to stay in Oklahoma because I have family here, I'm basically from here, and I dearly love the great and sovereign state of Oklahoma, although that is a perversion I share only with consenting adults. Because I realize that not everybody loves it. We've got tornadoes, and it's hot in the summer and cold in the winter, but I love Oklahoma. So I didn't really want to leave to get my PhD, and the reason I tell you all this is because it relates to channels. I went to OU, which has a PhD program in marketing, to talk to them about their program, and I got down there and they told me a couple of things that frightened me off from the PhD program at OU. The first of which was I had gone there for undergraduate and I absolutely hated OU. Visceral hatred of OU as a result of having gone there. The second was they said, well, we hope you're interested in logistics and transportation because that's the kind of school we are. That's what we're focused on, is logistics and transportation in marketing, and so we hope that that's what you want to do. And there's a reason for that. If you think about it, Oklahoma is located smack dab in the center of the country. We have 3 major highways that run through the Oklahoma City metropolitan area: I-44, I-35, and I-40. So we have an east-west and 2 north-south, and one sort of southwest to northeast routes. And so you can get a lot of data. There's a lot of trucking that goes on through Oklahoma, and you can get a lot of data and things like that from companies here, and so that's one of the reasons that they have a logistics program at OU. But I just thought, I can't think of anything worse than doing logistics studies and marketing. I mean, it's just completely boring. It's the part of marketing that when you talk about it, students don't think of as being marketing, because it's about just-in-time inventory control, and they don't think of that as. But that's where marketing really started, was as a discipline in those kinds of studies. How do we get stuff from farm to market in the most efficient way? The cheese studies at the University of Wisconsin were some of the earliest studies in marketing, and so if you look at the history of marketing, but it's the part of marketing that I want nothing to do with. I mean, I just don't like it. So if I had to choose between cutting out things like integrated marketing, communication, and advertising, which will be our last and final group project, and it's the most fun one, I save it for last, the most fun group project is to come up with an ad and tell me why it's a great ad, which that's what you'll do. I'll tell you that assignment today. We'll look at those on Tuesday, and then the 4th exam will be on Thursday, and then we have the final exam. If you're happy with your grades after the 4th exam, you don't have to take the final exam. You're exempt from it. So I had no interest in marketing, and I thought, yuck, I don't want to do that. So I went up to OSU, which also has a PhD program, and I talked to them, and they didn't have any luck graduating people out of that program. And so I went off to New Mexico, which is also my home state as well. I was raised between New Mexico and Oklahoma, to beautiful Las Cruces, which is down on the border by El Paso. And it's where in El Paso there were 3,000 murders last year alone in the city of El Paso. It's one of the deadliest cities, or not El Paso, I'm sorry, Juarez, which is across the border from El Paso, and Las Cruces is just across the state line from El Paso. So, you know, there's some crime that goes on across the border down there. But that's what I chose to get my PhD. So if I had to cut something, it's going to be logistics and channels, and so that's the part I cut. But we will at least talk about two of the most important parts, because they split the logistics and channels marketing into two chapters. The general overview of channels, and then also a channel on retailing and wholesaling. So we will talk, at least in part, about the place part of marketing today with retailing and wholesaling. So I apologize if you were just passionate about becoming a purchasing and logistics person. You can go across over here after class to Dr. Dinchev and talk to him. He loves that kind of stuff. He worked for DHL in the corporate world, and he likes transportation and logistics, and you can talk to him. And we actually have a purchasing program in the department as well. It's just not my thing. So if you love that, go talk to him. And if you're offended because I cut it out of the fourth exam, and I didn't cut it out of the third exam, and you want an extra chapter in there, you let me know, and I'll create a special test just for you on those topics. But we will talk about retailing and wholesaling. So let's talk about the value of retailing. And this is really important, and it's really interesting this time of year, because it's estimated that approximately 50% of all retail sales are associated in some way with the holidays. That's right. And the biggest holidays are Christmas in the United States. It's not true all across the world, but in the United States, Christmas. And so it's really an important part of our economy, and it's what, in many respects, drives our economy. It's what it feeds the engine of our consumer-based economy in the United States. So it's an incredibly important sector of the economy. 4 of the 40 largest businesses in the United States are in retail, and you know what they are. They're Walmart, which is number 1, and we'll see if they stay number 1 or if they're supplanted by online retailing as we move into the online retailing market. Costco, Home Depot, and Target. So those are the big ones. The four of the largest 40 businesses are in retail. So that's important. It's a major part of our economy, and so it adds a lot of value. What is it that the consumer gets from retailing and wholesaling, and these intermediaries between the producers? So I'll do just a little bit of channels and talking about this in my segue into retailing. So a lot of times, and one of the things that we hear in marketing today, and it's very fashionable, is let's cut out the middleman, buy direct. And the internet has allowed us, in some respects, to do that, to cut out the middleman or engage in what we call in marketing disintermediation. That is the removal of barriers or intermediaries between the producer and the consumer. So the most direct route is direct from the producer to the consumer. Now, what's wrong with this historically? And one of the reasons that the internet has made this possible to have this more direct channel of marketing is because you can now connect with the producers in a way that you couldn't have before. If we go back through most of the history of marketing, which we talked about at the beginning of time, where did they manufacture automobiles for most of history in the United States? Sure, it's Chicago. Chicago is wrong. What's the correct answer? Detroit. Henry Ford starts, the first mass-produced automobile in the United States in Michigan. And if you were a consumer, are you going to be able to, at the early part of the Industrial Revolution, are you going to be able to go? Is it convenient for you if you live in, for example, New York even, to go and travel to Michigan to get your automobile? No, it's not. So we have to have other people that help us get that stuff. So this producer to consumer, we see this in simple transactions historically, but now we do have that ability to connect directly with manufacturers. So I have a lot of French cuff shirts. That's kind of my thing, is French cuff shirts and bow ties. And I used to buy all of my French cuff shirts pretty much from Dillard's. So I'd go to Dillard's and I'd buy the shirt. I never thought I would buy clothes online, but I can now buy directly from the manufacturer as a result of the internet, which has allowed us to disintermediate. But what we are seeing is that there is some re-intermediation of intermediaries as they become necessary, because they add this value in terms of having the products at the time, the place, the form, and the possession that you want them. And so, although in some respects we've disintermediated, in other respects we're seeing a re-intermediation of the channels, because people want things and they can't necessarily get them at the time, place, or form that they want them directly from the producer. And an example of this is historically where we had a disintermediation and now we're seeing a re-intermediation. Dell. If you wanted a Dell, how did you buy a Dell? You bought the Dell from Dell. You picked up the phone, and if you didn't have internet access at the time because you were living in Luther, where I keep my horses, and they have dial-up out there, and it's horrible, you might pick up the phone and call Dell and order your computer, and they would customize it. It was mass customization, and they would ship it to you. One of the things that we realized is that people, and that's what the way Dell sold it for a long time. That's disintermediation. Historically, if you wanted a computer, who produced the first computer? That was sort of a commercialized for everyday people, a personal computer. Who was the big company that came out with it? IBM, right? IBM's a personalized computer. My mother had one for a real estate office. She got it like the second year that they were released. I think at that time it cost something like $5,000. This was in the 70s. That was a lot of money for a real estate company to put into something. We had one of them. You didn't have, it was for the whole office, and they used it to draft contracts for the most part. You didn't have it on your desk. So IBM is one of the first big players in this market, right, to come out with this personalized computer, the IBM PC. And at that point in time, they didn't have the internet. And long distance, you all don't remember this, but long distance was really expensive. To call somebody long distance was an expensive call. And so you went to a store and you bought it from somebody who bought it from somebody who bought it from IBM or transported it. So they had this time, place, form, and possession. Now, the internet and nationwide calling, that's no longer long distance, enabled Dell to say, like, I can cut out these middlemen and ship directly to the consumer. You call up or you go online and you order the Dell. But let's take, for example, a laptop. A number of you have iBooks or Macs. What is it that you want to do before you purchase that Mac, maybe? You what? Yeah, I wanted to try it out. If you call directly from Dell and you order it, you couldn't do what? Try it out. And maybe trying it out with a CPU on the floor and a monitor was not all that important, but what is the value in these laptops? So what are the things that are going to be important that maybe you want to try? I mean, pretty much keyboards are our standard. When they started getting really fancy with keyboards, do you all remember the breakaway or the split keyboards that were like this, that were supposed to be better for your posture and not supposed to be so ergonomically incorrect? For the most part, keyboards look like this, right? And there's not a lot of variation, and it doesn't make a big difference. Monitors sort of look like this, and CPUs, it doesn't really matter how big it is, because you're not going to do what? You're not going to lug it around with you and change its location frequently. But laptops are made for what? To lug around. I remember the first laptop I got. It was when I was in college. And it weighed, I think, 12 and a half pounds. Doesn't seem like a lot, 12 and a half pounds, until you do what? till you carry it around for a while, and then all of a sudden, it seems like a lot. So what's one of the things that you might want to know before you spend a huge amount of money on this product? Because Macs are expensive. They're still expensive, aren't they?
Yeah.
They're not like, you can get a comparable sized, with the same sort of storage and memory in a Windows-based unit for what? $400, $500, somewhere around there, and you're going to pay twice that or more for the Mac. So before you spend, and $400 is not, as students probably, is not chump change to you, is it? Is that you're walking around, blowing money? No, probably not. So what are you going to want to know about that notebook before you spend your $400 or twice or 3 times that much on your Mac? What are you going to want to know about it? Well, how much it weighs, how big the screen is. I mean, the things that you can't, the memory you might want to know about, and the storage you might want to know about, but you can know about those things without actually testing it out. You have some idea of what it means, although the average consumer, we know from surveys, doesn't know. They think that memory on computers equals what? That's what it does, but most consumers think it equals what? Storage. It's not storage, unless you have a Mac or an iPhone, in which case memory does actually equal storage, right? So you're going to want to try it out. I have fat fingers, so I want to try out the keyboard, because the keyboards vary a lot in size depending on the size of the thing. And so what we've seen is we've seen a reintermediation in things like Dell. You can now still order a Dell directly from Dell, but you can also order it where? You can go buy it where? At Best Buy, or at Sam's, or Costco, or these things. And so retailing gives you these products at the time you want it. You can get it if you, in the olden days when Dell got started, they would custom build your computer, and how long did it take you to get it? Took a couple weeks. Your old unit just crashed, and it's the end of the semester, and you have all of those lovely, which I don't do in my class, term papers. I hate term papers. I don't want to read a thick tome from you. Right? So I come up with shorter papers. But when I was a liberal arts professor, there was enormous pressure for me to have in my 3,000 and 4,000 level courses a 15-page term paper. That was sort of the standard that all my colleagues over there did, and there was enormous pressure for me to do that, and I thought, God, that's crazy, I don't know what to do. So, not in my class, but in other classes, you have that lovely, how many of you have had a 15-page term paper? It's less common in colleges of business, but you've had this thick tome. Your current computer, your current laptop goes out, you call Dell, and it's going to be 2 weeks before they can get it to you, because it's what, this time of year, Christmas. You're not going to want to wait 2 weeks, are you? You're going to need that computer now, and so it has it at the time that you want it, in the place that you want it. You don't want to drive all the way to wherever it is that Dell manufactures it, in the form that you want it, and the possession, which adds value in terms of the risk associated with that. So these are the utilities that retailing, wholesaling, and channels add to your experience. We a lot of times don't see this part of marketing, or we don't think about it, particularly when you get past the retailer, if you go to the wholesaler, but they do add these 4 values in terms of having it in the time, the place. If you're not dealing with a computer, let's say you're dealing with M&Ms, we've talked about M&Ms in here, and you can now customize your M&Ms and order them from M&Ms. What is it that you want when you're hungry and you want a snack that's a hard-coated chocolate candy and you just love M&Ms? Do you want to buy a pallet of M&Ms, which is how M&Ms sells them out of their factory? What's a pallet? It's got several gross on it. Are you going to want to buy that? No, you want what? You want 1 packet of M&Ms. You don't want, and so wholesalers and retailers and other intermediaries provide it in the form that you want it. It's not in a crate or in a pallet or in a case or a gross. You can get 1 of the product that you want. We can classify retailing and wholesaling in a number of ways. With regard to classifying retailing, we can classify it in terms of the form of ownership. Are you an independent retailer? There are about 1.1 million of these in the United States. What are independent retailers? Well, lots of little gas stations, your mom and pop convenience stores are independent retailers. They own one location. If you go over here to Kicking Bird Strip Mall, there's a bookstore over there. That's an independent retail outlet. Alton's Clothing for Men in downtown Everett. You can have a corporate chain. So what's an example of a corporate chain? Things like Dillard's, Macy's, what else? Walmart, Target, or corporate chains. You can have contractual systems. To some extent, we've seen shrinking of the contractual systems. The example I give you here is IGA, which stands for International Grocers Association. You used to see a whole lot of these. And what they were was you'd see, Smith's IGA. And what that was is it was owned by Smith, and it was, a part of a contractual system. And what they were doing was they were using the power of their buying in groups to lessen the costs so that you can compete with the bigger corporate chains like Walmart. We can classify, another way of classifying retail is by the level of service that you have. Things like self-service, and the thing I put here is things like warehouse clubs. When warehouse clubs first got started, you went, you loaded it yourself, and you took it out and put it in your car yourself. They didn't provide any bags or boxes or anything like that for you. It was all just, you pulled it off the shelf, you put it on the cart or in your basket, and you took it out to your car yourself. Now warehouse clubs are doing things, they're adding more levels of service, but historically, if you went to the grocery store as opposed to a warehouse club, what kinds of services would you get at the grocery store? You get bagging, and you'd have people that were around maybe answer questions about things. It used to be when I was a kid growing up, and now they're starting to reintroduce these in a lot of places. You actually had a grocer, you could actually ring the bell if there wasn't stuff out on the case in the coffin boxes that you wanted. You could ring the bell, and a butcher with a guy with a white coat would come out and maybe cut the cut of meat that you wanted. So warehouse clubs is pretty much, you pull it yourself and load it yourself, but they're starting to get more service. You can have limited service, which are things like Walmart. So what does Walmart have that they offer in terms of limited? Well, you can get a Walmart credit card. They don't have baggers, do they, at Walmart? But they do have a what? They have a greeter who tells you where things are. And actually now they're becoming more full service in terms of what can you get with Walmart? You can what? You can get gas, you can get tires and gas and all of that, but what else? In terms of more personal service that you can get at Walmart. They are doing the personal shopper now at Walmart, the personal shopping services. And so they're becoming more full service, and we'll see that when we talk about the wheel of retailing, that as you go through the progress of when you enter the market, generally it's smaller and you don't offer as many services, and then as you grow, you add more services. So we can classify it by the level of service all the way to full service. If you go to a really high-end department store, one that's from this area that was started in Dallas, Texas, Neiman Marcus. How many of you have been to a Neiman Marcus? They actually have concierge services at the Neiman's in Dallas, at North Park Mall, and so they have a whole wide range of things to help you with, in terms of not just going and picking out your clothes at the rack and at Walmart. Can you even try on the clothes?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Sam's. Can you try on the clothes at Sam's? Is there any dressing rooms at Sam's? No. Just pick it out. To all the way to full service. We can also classify retailers. Another way of classifying them is by the types of merchandise that they carry. The depth of the line and the breadth of the line. So the depth relates to the number of different products in a specific class or category that they'll carry. For example, underarm deodorant. if you want to buy underarm deodorant from Sam's, how much choice do you have in men's underarm deodorant from Sam's? I can tell you this, because I go to Sam's every week. It's my business. They have one. If you don't like Degree, you're out of luck at Sam's. They have one variety of men's underarm deodorant. They have two, I think, of women's out here on the I-35. You go to Walmart, and what do they have? They have a bunch. They have Mitchum, they have Degree, they have Old Spice, they have, all of these different things that you can buy. So having a lot of each item, and then the breadth, the size and variety of the merchandise they carry. What's the advantage? So if you have breadth, what's that? Well, you not just carry deodorant, but you also carry a whole lot of things. What does Walmart carry? They carry textiles, they carry packaged goods, they carry fresh produce, meat, car batteries, tires, automobile products, hunting and fishing gear and things like that. You have more specialized retailers, so what's an example of one that's in the same market as Walmart but doesn't have the breadth? How many of you have been to Dick's Sporting Goods? Right? That all that Dick's does and all that Academy does. Can you buy tires at Dick's?
No.
Or can you buy tires at Academy? No. What do you buy at Academy or Dick's? Athletic sporting stuff, right? So the breadth and depth of the lines is another way that we can classify retailers. One of the things that's becoming really, really popular is non-store retailing, obviously. This started historically with catalogs, and the biggest one historically was the Sears and Roebuck catalog. It used to be called the Wish Book. I told you all this before. You could order all kinds. You could order chickens from Sears and Roebuck. You could order an entire house from Sears and Roebuck. That has transferred into a lot of different non-store retailing. So what do we have now? Well, we still have catalogs and direct mail, although that's becoming less and less because why? We've got the internet. Catalogs and direct mail are expensive to produce. They can't be redone if something changes. So we're moving into online. We're seeing a resurgence of telemarketers, oddly enough. I thought we had totally eliminated the telemarketer with the what? What had eliminated the telemarketers? There were two things that eliminated telemarketers, or started to. They've come back with a vengeance. Well, caller ID was one of the ones, but before that, there was something called the Do Not Call List registry that you could put yourself on, and people did that when they still had their home, and they still do that. And it was cell phones. Those were the two things that really, really limited it, but they've now starting to make a resurgence. And then direct selling. What is direct selling? What's examples of direct selling that you all might have heard of? Pampered Chef. How many of you have heard of that? Scentsy is direct selling. Avon. Mary Kay. What do you do if you buy it from a representative directly from the company? And of course, automated vending. And we're seeing more and more. Automated vending was pretty much limited back in the 1950s and 60s and 70s. Automated vending was limited to what? It was newspapers and soda pop for the most part. Those were the things that you got automated. Now what can you get automated? Yeah, you can, I mean, there's all kinds. You can even buy Proactive solution now in automated vending machines in the airports. You see it being sold in the airports. So there's been all kinds of stuff. Automated pizza?
Yeah, they made it in front of you.
Really? There's one that is being advertised as a franchise opportunity for the what? The frozen yogurt. Yeah, the frozen yogurt franchise. So the wheel of retailing and the retail life cycle. So just like products have a life cycle, we see that retailers have a life cycle as well. So generally in stage one, and this is, if we think about the best known example in the United States, we'll think about Walmart. How did Walmart get started? Who founded Walmart?
Sam Walton.
Sam Walton, and Sam Walton has a tie to Oklahoma. He was born in Kingfisher, Oklahoma. Who said it first? You get 5 points. Make sure and see me after class. He was born in Kingfisher, Oklahoma. I'll give you 5 points if you know what Sam Walton's first store was. Was it called Walmart?
I just visited this museum, and I know the answer.
If you can give me the category of store that it was, I'll give you 5
General,
points.
one of the general store.
No. It was a 5 and dime, so you get 5 points. If you know the name of the...
Walton's 5 and dime.
No, that was not the first one. It was a 5 and dime. What was the first franchise that he had? Nobody knows this. It was a Ben Franklin. Ben Franklin was his first store that he started in Arkansas. And Ben Franklin was this series, so there were lots of, when I was growing up, what we called 5 and dimes. Ben Franklin was one of the best known. What was another, anybody, if you can give me another example of a 5 and dime, I'll give you 5 points. What? They were grocery, but there's one that's close to that. Had a... Everybody think of another 5 and dime?
Bartell.
Walton's.
That's a 5 and dime.
It was a 5 and dime. I'll give you 5 points for that. Woolworths. You all don't even remember Woolworths. They've gone out at one point in time, the richest little girl in America was the Woolworths heiress. They're no longer around. So Walmart starts by Sam Walton buying a Ben Franklin franchise and opening it in Arkansas. And he rented the space, the retail space for that. And he had a number of innovations that he brought to the Ben Franklin. Under that franchising agreement, they could actually have some flexibility. Most franchising agreements severely limit what you can do with the franchise. If you want to have a McDonald's franchise, for example, can you decide that, hey, we're in, the southwest part of the country here in Oklahoma, and I want to sell spicy beef tacos out of my McDonald's franchise. Can you do that? No. McDonald's is not going to let you sell spicy beef tacos out of your franchise. They have very stringent franchise agreements, but apparently Sam Walton's first franchising agreement with Ben Franklin wasn't that stringent, and so he had some latitude to develop some really innovative things that he did in that Ben Franklin's 5 and dime that really led to dynamic growth. One of the things that he introduced that nobody had seen before, and this is really remarkable at that point in time in the South, were these wonderful things that you put on your feet that didn't require socks or tying your shoes and were easy to get on and off. Nobody thought that they'd sell. He marked them down really cheaply. He got them a good deal on them, marked them down cheaply, and they sold really, really quickly. Just put them in a big bin. What would those be? Everybody has them now. Flip-flops, yeah. That was one of the things that really got big in the South. It was as a result of Sam Walton bringing it into his Ben Franklin. What happens is that the landlord of that store location, decided that he noticed Sam's success with this Ben Franklin franchise and thought, well, that would be a good business for my son-in-law. And so he didn't renew Walmart, or he didn't renew Sam Walton's lease, and so he had to start looking for something else. So he had to come up with another location. Eventually, he goes away from the Ben Franklin franchise and he starts his own. And you got that? That was called, and I'll give you 5 points for that. It was called Walton's, right? Walton's 5 and dime. And then that merges into Walmart. At that point, when they start having more stores, you start going from the 5 and dime. Is Walmart a 5 and dime now? Why was it called the 5 and dime? Because almost everything could be purchased for a nickel or a dime, right? 10-cent store. So you start having higher margins. In stage 3, you get strongly established. So at the time, if you think about, again, the history of Walmart, at the time Walmart starts this discount store, moves away just from the 5 and dime into a discount store, what else was in the market? Well, there was TG&Y, there was Kmart, and there were all these other people that were in the market. So you start establishing a stronger identity. You generally start seeing increases in price and cost at that point. And then in stage 4, You get competitors enter the market, low margins and penetrative pricing. And then you start seeing the levels of service that we talked about increasing as you go from stage 1 to stage 4 in the wheel of retailing. So changes in retailing. It's, of course, like all things in marketing, one of the things that I said I wished I could do was be a historian, because we know how the Civil War ended. We have lots and lots of changes that we have to keep up with as marketers that make it interesting, but it also makes it difficult. What are some of the changes in retailing? Well, it's no longer going to be a one-channel strategy. Many retailers are realizing that they are going to have to be part of the intermediaries in a multi-channel retailing or integrated approach. So what does Walmart have? Historically, again, Walmart starts with Ben Franklin. If you wanted to buy from Sam Walton, you had to be located in that town. Now, if you want to buy from Walmart, you can do what? You can buy online. You can get your prescriptions refilled over the phone. So you have a multi-channel retailing approach, an integrated approach where you try and speak with a single voice across all of those platforms. And then managing your customer experience is a huge thing in the retail environment. As we go through and people are demanding more and more, it was thought in the 1970s and 80s that it was just low prices. And that was what Walmart's slogan was for a long time, was everyday low prices. It still is, but they're moving more into other, as you have more services added, that may not necessarily still be the focus in 5 or 10 years. So it's managing that customer experience and the expectations. Wholesaling. Wholesaling, these are people that are intermediaries between the retailer and the producer. So these are the ones that we really don't see and we don't think about. And there are different types of wholesalers that we can have. We can have merchant wholesalers, and we can classify those as full or limited. These are people who actually take title to the goods. They may repackage them somewhat, so they'll break them down from maybe box cars or container units, standard container units. They might buy container units of stuff, break them down into pallets, and then sell them to the retailers. And they can be classified as full or limited service. So full service merchant wholesalers will provide maybe transportation, storage, some repackaging, credit services for their customers, which are usually retailers, or they can be limited services where you just basically go and pick it up. And that's what Sam started out as, was a limited service merchant wholesaler. Who primarily was the target customer for Sam's when they got started? Now almost all of you probably have a Sam's or a Costco membership if you're not from here. But who was the primary member for Sam's? Well, it was businesses like my family business. It was people who needed to buy in larger quantities but couldn't afford to get maybe the full service of going with US Foods or Cisco or things like that. And as they progressed, again, in their progression through their history, they've now expanded. Now more and more people are buying at wholesalers. And they started out as limited services. They didn't offer credit at Sam's. You couldn't finance things. What can you do now? They have a Sam's credit card account for businesses. They have platinum membership and things like that, so they're offering more services. You can have agents or brokers. There are two types. You can have manufacturer's agents. Agents and brokers facilitate the transaction, but they don't actually take title to the product. They may facilitate it. They bring buyers and sellers together, but they don't actually take title to the product. You can have manufacturer's agents. They act as the producer's sales force, the company that I was general counsel and executive vice president for. This is what we did. We sold most of our product. We had a small inside sales force. We sold most of our product, which was learning management systems, through a system of manufacturers. We manufactured it and we sold it to independent distributors who then went out and made contact with schools and prisons and sold it on our behalf. And then you can have brokers who don't represent anybody, but they represent the transaction itself. And they bring together sellers and buyers in a common market. So for example, this is used in a lot of produce and grocery type businesses. Any questions about retailing and wholesaling? All right, so I've got a few minutes. I want to give you your last critical thinking challenge, and this is the most fun one. In your groups, for next time, and so you have a few minutes to work on it in class, I want you to find an ad that you think is a great ad and tell me why, and this is your last chance to earn bonus points for the semester. Tell me why the ad is great. What makes the ad great? I'll create a Dropbox for it. You can put it there and give me the URL so that we can watch it in class, so we can watch those videos that you come up with as your great ad for Tuesday. And then we will have the fourth exam on Thursday, and it will cover retailing, wholesaling, and integrated marketing, communication, advertising, and promotion.
I really like Dilly Dilly.